Alright, so I may have made a little bit of a mistake on this build, but first, let me explain. What is up everyone, I'm Jason from JB Watch Mods. Welcome back to the channel. Now as you would have seen from the title of this video, today I'm doing a VH31 quartz watch build. Now like I mentioned earlier, I did make a bit of a mistake during this build, but I'm not going to tell you what it is. I want you to tell me in the comment section below. I want to see how many eagle-eyed viewers I have out there. Now I will give you a little bit of a clue. It's not so much something that I've done, but the parts that I've used. So with that said, let's jump into this build and see how we get on. Okay, so the movement we're using today is the Seiko VH31 Quartz movement. Now this is a battery powered movement that has a sweeping second hand, giving it the look of a mechanical watch. Perfect for those of you who are looking for a set and forget kind of watch, but still want that look of that beautiful sweeping second hand. Now the aftermarket parts availability for this movement is almost non-existent. So in order to make this movement actually usable, we need to use this spacer, which will allow us to use NH35 parts with this VH31 movement. And the spacer is really easy to fit. All we need to do is make sure we line up the crown hole in the movement with the cutout in the spacer and then just clip into one another. Now we can use an NH35 dial and case. The handset will still need to be a VH31 handset. And if you're wondering where to get these parts, I'll leave everything linked in the description below. Now the spacer has two holes in the top which accept the dial feet. And when we grab our dial, we can see that we've got 4 feet on the back, meaning that we have to cut 2 off. So let's line the dial up with the movement to see which feet need to be cut off. Once you work out which feet need to be cut off, you can grab your side cutters and wiggle each foot back and forth until it snaps off. Now this will most likely leave you with 2 small stubs on the back of the dial. Now it's always best to sand these flat. Now I use a small Dremel to do this, but if you don't have a Dremel, a file would work perfectly. Once you've got the dial nice and flat, be sure to give it a good cleaning using an air blower and a bit of Rotoco to get any metal filings off the back of that dial. Now we can fit this dial, which is as easy as lining up the dial feet and pushing it down into that spacer. When you do this, just make sure that the dial sits flush all the way around and that everything is still located and where it should be. Now we can get ready to fit the handset. Now in order to do this, we're going to need to put the crown stem into the movement so we can control the hands. Now the movement I got only came with 1 crown stem. It didn't have a dummy crown stem fitted. So what we're going to do is pull the crown out of our case and fit it to the crown stem. Then we can insert that into the movement and use that to control our hands. Once we've done that, we're ready to start fitting the hands. So let's get this movement under the hand press and start with the hour hand. Sorry for the quick interruption, but I just wanted to say if you're enjoying this video so far, you might be interested in checking out my Patreon account, which is linked in the description below. Now over there, I offer one-on-one customized support for all your watch modding needs. I even share all of my supplies to help you kickstart your watch modding journey. Now, I also do a monthly watch giveaway, which you can enter for as little as $5 Australian. Now, if that sounds like something you're interested in and you want to help support the channel, check out my Patreon, which is linked in the description below. Now, back to the video. And I should mention that because there's no date wheel on this movement, we can set 12 o'clock at any position. And once we get the hour hand fitted, it's good practice to rotate the movement over just to make sure that that hour hand doesn't foul on any of the indices. And again, because there's no date wheel on this movement, I'm only going to rotate the movement once. If there was a date wheel, I would rotate the movement over 2 times to make sure the movement is back at 12 o'clock. And next up is our minute hand. When you're fitting this hand, just pay close attention to make sure that it is lined up at 12 o'clock. And we'll do the same thing here and rotate the movement over just to make sure that there are no clearance issues. Now the rotoco that I'm using to hold the hand while I'm fitting it is great for cleaning any smudges, dust or fingerprints off your handset or dial. And it's a good idea to clean these hands as you go so you've got unrestricted access to each hand. Now that everything's cleaned, we can go ahead and fit our second hand. Now there are no shortcuts for making this an easy process, but there are a few things that you can do to make your life a little bit easier. Having the movement at eye level is key, along with good lighting. Now having a good hand press also makes this job easier, but it's definitely not a necessity. Now that we've got all hands fitted, we just want to double check that there are no clearance issues and that second hand ticks along as it should. So now that we're finished setting the hands, we can get ready to fit this movement into the case. Now before we can do that, we need to remove our dummy crown stem. So there's a small lever on the back side of this movement which needs to be depressed in order to pull the crown out. The crown also has to be pushed in before you can access that lever. Now it can be a little bit tricky, but I use my thumb and index finger to hold the screwdriver and apply pressure to the lever while using my ring finger to pull the crown out. Now we can grab our case, remove the case back, pull out the case back gasket and clean this crystal. Now, as many of you know, I always use my lens pen and air blower to clean the crystal. I find it always gives me the best results. Spotless, smudge-free crystals every time. Now let's pair these two together. We'll give the dial one last blowdown just to make sure that there's no loose dust sitting on that dial. Then we can place our case onto the movement. And when we flip our case over, we just want to make sure that everything is aligned correctly by making sure that the crown hole in the movement is lined up with the crown tube in the case. So now that everything's looking as it should, we can start on cutting our crown stem down to the correct length. Now I know that the crown stem that comes with the movement is way too long, so I'm going to cut this down to where I think it should be. Then we can refit the crown and test it to see how it's looking. And after cutting the crown stem with my side cutters, I always like to file the end of the crown stem down just so there are no sharp burrs on there that could possibly damage the threads inside the crown. So now let's test fit this crown stem. Now when the crown is in the pulled out position, it's always nice to have a little bit of that spring in the crown like it does here. Then we need to make sure that the crown screws all the way flush into the case. And it looks like I've nailed this on the first attempt. Absolute fluke. But I guess you've got to get lucky sometimes. So now I'm going to pull this crown stem back out, remove the crown and apply a little bit of Loctite to those threads on the crown stem. This is just good insurance to make sure that that crown doesn't wiggle its way loose over time. And using a medium strength Loctite just means that we'll be able to remove this crown if we ever need to service it for whatever reason in the future. And once we've assembled our crown assembly, don't forget to wipe any excess Loctite off before putting it back into the case. Okay, perfect. Now we can get started on sealing this case up. So let's grab our case back gasket and lubricate it in some silicone grease. Now the grease does a couple of things. It aids in putting the case back on and makes it go on nice and smoothly, and it also acts as a water barrier, helping to stop any moisture entering your case. Then once our case back gasket is fitted, we can grab our case back and fit that too. Just make sure you run it in by hand to start with so you don't risk damaging the threads. Then you can grab your case back tool and lock it down. And that marks the completion of the watch head assembly. Now we can move on to our next step, which is going to be fitting our bezel insert. Now our case already has double-sided tape fitted to the bezel, so all we need to do is remove that protective layer and stick our bezel insert down. And this is always my favorite part of the build. For some reason, putting that bezel insert on always just transforms the watch and turns it into a totally different beast. Now, something's not feeling quite right. I'm trying to do micro adjustments to stick this bezel down, but as you can see, it is still totally loose. Now, turns out this double-sided tape isn't the best and doesn't stick at all. So we're going to need to remove this double-sided tape and fit our own. So removing it is actually fairly easy. I just use my screwdriver just to pry it up and it comes off mostly intact. Then I just grab a microfiber cloth with some cleaning solution just to get rid of any last bits of residue that are left on that bezel. So now that our bezel is prepped, let's prep our bezel insert. So we'll grab our own 3M double-sided tape, and this time we're going to stick the tape to the bezel insert itself. And this is just because it's a lot easier to apply the tape to the bezel insert than it is to do the case. And bezel insert tape is normally pre-cut, so all you need to do is push around the edges and it'll come apart nicely. Now usually when you order a bezel insert by itself, it will come with 3 or 4 bits of bezel tape like this, so usually you don't need to order this tape separately. So now that we've got our tape fitted to our bezel insert, we can stick this down onto the case, and fingers crossed this time it doesn't come loose. And now this is feeling much better. It's sticking down as it should and doesn't feel like it's going to come loose anytime soon. So let's grab our microfiber cloth and push this down, hopefully for what is the last time. And a quick bezel spin just to make sure that everything is operating as it should. Sometimes if you get that bezel insert on an angle, it'll catch on the crystal and won't turn. Just something to be aware of. But this is looking great, so now let's move on to the final step, which is putting our bracelet on. Now we've gone with the brushed oyster style bracelet, which I think is going to really top this watch off. I think a polished center link bracelet would also look really nice, but the brushed bracelet just gives it a bit more of an understated feel. So to fit the bracelet, I slide the spring bar into the end link and then fit it into the case. While applying pressure with my thumb, I use a small screwdriver just to pop each side of the spring bar into the case. Then, once that side's done, all we need to do is repeat the process on the other side. And just like that, you've managed to build your own watch. Now, if you're looking for more one-on-one customized support, head on over to my Patreon, which will be linked in the description below. That's where I can help you put together parts list, troubleshoot problems, and if you're looking to do your own branding on your dials, I can help with that as well. We even do a monthly watch giveaway. But now let's run some B-roll and see how this watch looks. That is it for today's build. Now, if you saw what I did wrong, let me know in the comments section below. Let's see how many of you are keen-eyed viewers. Now, I didn't even realize what I had done wrong until I had completed the watch and I was shooting the B-roll. I couldn't believe it, but I was too far committed, so I went with it anyway. Now, obviously, I will remove the dial and replace the words automatic with the word quartz, but what do? I was too far in. Anyway, thank you for watching and I'll see you all in the next video.